Hello everyone, and welcome to my CBS Y&R gossip channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The night pressed down on the ranch with a strange, oppressive stillness, the kind that made every sound feel amplified and every shadow seem alive. Nick Newman stood alone in the living room, staring at the fireplace though no fire burned there. His reflection in the dark glass shifted, blurred, then sharpened again, and for a fleeting moment he thought he saw someone else standing behind him. He turned quickly, heart pounding, but the room was empty. Still, the sense that he was not alone refused to fade. Nick rubbed his temples, trying to ground himself. He had barely slept in days. The weight of everything, family pressure, unresolved grief, old betrayals that never truly healed, had been building inside him like a storm with no release. He told himself he was exhausted, that his mind was playing tricks on him, but deep down he feared something darker was happening. The walls of the ranch, once a place of comfort, now felt like they were closing in. A voice drifted through the room, soft but unmistakable. "Nick." He froze. The voice was familiar, too familiar. Slowly, he turned again. This time, he saw her. She stood near the staircase, bathed in a faint glow that didn't seem to come from any light source. Her eyes were gentle, concerned, and filled with a sadness that cut straight through him. "No," Nick whispered. "This isn't real." She stepped closer, her movements smooth, almost unreal. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said. "You always do that." Nick shook his head, backing away. "I know you're not here. I know this is just in my head." She smiled sadly. "Does that make it hurt any less?" His chest tightened. He wanted to reach out, to feel something solid, something real, but fear held him back. He had seen this before, felt this kind of presence before, and it had never ended well. The hallucination lingered, watching him with quiet understanding, until the sound of the front door opening shattered the moment. When Nick looked back, she was gone. Victor Newman's voice echoed through the ranch as he entered, sharp and commanding as ever. "Nick, where are you?" Nick swallowed hard and forced himself to respond. "I'm here." Victor stepped into the living room, his gaze immediately locking onto his son. His expression shifted subtly, concern flickering beneath the familiar steel. "You don't look well," Victor said. "What's going on?" Nick tried to brush it off, but the effort felt hollow even to him. "I'm fine. Just tired." Victor studied him for a long moment, then nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. "Get some rest," he said. "We'll talk tomorrow." Nick watched his father leave, the weight of unspoken worries hanging heavy in the air. As soon as Victor disappeared down the hall, Nick's legs gave way, and he sank onto the couch, breathing hard. He pressed his hands to his face, trying to steady himself. The hallucination had felt so real, so vivid, and that terrified him more than he wanted to admit. Across town, at the Newman penthouse, Nikki paced the floor, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She had tried calling Victor multiple times, each unanswered call fueling her anxiety. A sense of dread gnawed at her, the kind she had learned never to ignore. When the door finally opened and Victor stepped inside, relief washed over her, followed quickly by alarm at the look on his face. "What happened?" Nikki asked, rushing to him. Victor set his coat aside, his movements slower than usual. "It's Nick," he said quietly. "Something's wrong." Nikki's heart sank. She wrapped her arms around Victor, holding him as tightly as she could. "We'll handle it," she said. "We always do." Victor leaned into her embrace, his strength faltering for just a moment. "I don't know if I can protect him from this," he admitted. "Not if it's happening inside his own mind." Nikki held him, feeling the weight of his fear seep into her own bones. She had seen Victor face countless enemies, survive betrayals and losses that would have broken most people, but this was different. This was their son, and the threat was something neither of them could fight head-on. While the Newmans grappled with their private turmoil, Kane Ashby stood alone in a dimly lit office, staring at a file spread open on the desk before him. His jaw was tight, his eyes dark with resolve and regret. The information inside the file had the power to destroy lives, to shatter the carefully constructed world of the Newman family. He had told himself for weeks that he would walk away, that some secrets were better left buried. But the truth had a way of demanding to be heard. Kane closed the file and exhaled slowly. He thought of Lily, of the years they had shared, of the pain that secrets had already caused between them. He thought of the Newmans, of Victor in particular, a man who had built his empire on control and manipulation. And he thought of himself, standing at a crossroads where silence felt like complicity. The next day, the Newman family gathered at the ranch, tension thick in the air. Victor sat at the head of the table, Nikki beside him, her hand resting protectively on his arm. Nick arrived late, his face pale, his eyes shadowed. He avoided everyone's gaze as he took a seat, the echoes of his hallucination still lingering in his mind. Before anyone could speak, the door opened and Kane walked in. His presence alone was enough to shift the energy in the room. Victor's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" Kane met his gaze without flinching. "We need to talk," he said. "All of us." Victor scoffed. "If this is about business." "It's not," Kane interrupted. "It's about the past. And the truth." Nikki's grip tightened on Victor's arm. She sensed what was coming, felt the warning bells ringing in her chest. "Kane," she said carefully, "this doesn't feel like the right time." "There will never be a right time," Kane replied. He turned his attention fully to Victor. "I know something you've gone to great lengths to keep hidden." Nick looked up, confusion and dread mingling in his expression. "What is he talking about?" Victor rose slowly from his chair, his voice cold. "You're playing a dangerous game." Kane's hands trembled slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Years ago, you manipulated the outcome of something that changed the course of multiple lives. One of those lives belongs to you." The room fell silent. Nikki's breath caught in her throat. "Victor," she whispered, searching his face for reassurance. Victor's eyes flicked to her, then back to Kane. "Stop," he said. "Now." But Kane pressed on. "Nick deserves to know the truth. All of you do." Nick's head began to pound, the familiar pressure building behind his eyes. He felt dizzy, disoriented, as if the room were tilting. A faint whisper brushed his ear, the same voice from the night before, urging him to listen. "What truth?" Nick asked hoarsely. Kane took a deep breath. "The truth about your past. About something that was taken from you before you ever had the chance to understand it." Victor slammed his hand on the table. "Enough." Nikki stood, placing herself between Victor and Kane. "Victor," she said softly, "if there's something he knows, something that's affecting our son, we need to hear it." Victor stared at her, pain and fury warring in his eyes. For a moment, it looked like he might refuse, might shut everything down the way he always had. But then his shoulders sagged, just slightly, and the fight seemed to drain out of him. Kane spoke the words that would change everything. Each sentence felt like a blow, each revelation stripping away another layer of Victor's carefully guarded armor. The room seemed to close in as the truth spilled out, exposing decisions made long ago, driven by fear and control, decisions that had rippled through the years with devastating consequences. Nick listened in stunned silence, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. The whispers in his head grew louder, overlapping with Kane's voice, until he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. He pressed his hands to the table, trying to stay upright, trying not to disappear into the chaos. When Kane finally stopped speaking, the silence was deafening. Victor stood motionless, his face ashen. Nikki turned to him, tears streaming down her face, and wrapped her arms around him as if to keep him from collapsing. "I didn't know," she said through sobs. "I swear, I didn't know." Victor's voice was barely audible. "I thought I was protecting my family." Nikki held him tighter. "You broke it," she whispered. Nick pushed back his chair and stood, his legs unsteady. He looked at Victor, the man he had idolized and fought against in equal measure, and saw him now not as a titan, but as a deeply flawed human being. "I need air," Nick said. "I need to get out of here." He stumbled toward the door, the world spinning around him. Outside, the cool air hit his face, but it did little to clear his mind. The hallucination returned, standing a few feet away, watching him with the same sad eyes. "They lied to you," she said gently. "But you're stronger than their lies." Nick sank onto the steps, his head in his hands. "I don't know what's real anymore." "Then start with how you feel," the voice replied. "That part is always real." Inside the ranch, Nikki continued to hold Victor as the weight of Kane's revelation settled over them. Victor's hands trembled, his composure shattered. "I've lost him," he murmured. "I've finally lost my son." Nikki pulled back just enough to look at him. "Not if you fight for him," she said. "Not if you tell him the rest of the truth. All of it." Victor closed his eyes, the cost of his choices crashing down on him. For the first time in a long while, he looked truly broken. Kane watched the scene unfold, a heavy knot of guilt twisting in his stomach. He had done what he believed was right, but the damage was undeniable. As he turned to leave, he knew nothing would ever be the same again. Outside, Nick slowly rose to his feet. The hallucination began to fade, her form dissolving into the night air. "This isn't the end," she said. "It's the beginning." Nick straightened, taking a shaky breath. He didn't know what the future held, or how he would untangle the truth from the lies, but one thing was clear. The secret that had been unleashed could never be contained again. And as the Newman family stood on the edge of their shattered reality, each of them would have to face what remained when the illusions were finally gone. Nick's world had begun to unravel in ways he never imagined possible. His mind, once sharp and clear, now betrayed him with shadows and whispers that were not there. The hallucinations crept in silently at first, fleeting images, sounds that no one else could hear. But soon, they became an overwhelming force, consuming his senses and clouding his judgment. He struggled to discern reality from the illusions his mind conjured, each moment a battle to hold on to what was true. Meanwhile, in a nearby room charged with tension, Nikki stood firm, holding Victor close. Her grip was both protective and resolute, a shield for Victor against the storm that was about to break. Victor, once the invincible titan in their lives, now appeared vulnerable, shaken to his core. The weight of impending revelation pressed heavily upon him, and Nikki's presence was the only anchor he had. Kane, known for his unyielding resolve and sharp instincts, had uncovered a secret so devastating that it threatened to shatter the fragile peace between them all. The secret was not just a truth hidden in shadows, but a revelation that pierced deep into the fabric of their relationships, exposing betrayals, lies, and long-buried pain. When Kane finally unleashed this secret, the room seemed to freeze in time, the air thick with disbelief and heartbreak. Victor's reaction was immediate and profound. The confident posture he usually maintained crumbled, replaced by a brokenness that was visible to everyone present. His eyes, usually filled with command and certainty, now reflected anguish and confusion. The secret Kane revealed was not just a personal betrayal, it was a fracture in the foundation of everything Victor believed in, challenging his very identity and the trust he had placed in those closest to him. As the hours passed, the fallout from Kane's revelation intensified. Conversations turned into confrontations, and silence into anguished cries. Nikki remained by Victor's side, her strength unwavering even as the emotional tempest raged around them. Nick, caught in the turmoil of his hallucinations, found himself slipping further away from the grasp of reality, his mind unable to process the chaos unfolding beyond his fractured perception. The story of their intertwined fates was one of love, loyalty, and heartbreak. Each character faced a reckoning with their past choices and the consequences that followed. The devastating secret unveiled by Kane forced them all to confront uncomfortable truths and question the foundations of their relationships. In the end, it was not just about betrayal or pain, but about the possibility of redemption, forgiveness, and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming adversity.